Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. It's your boys, Jack and Dave here, and we have an injury crisis on our hands here that we have to dive into. Plenty of players seem to be dropping like flies right now, and it's happening in training, it looks like, and we have to take a look at which injuries are seemingly happening right now at Spurs, and also as well, which players could step up, because with every injury comes an opportunity for a certain Spurs player to maybe take advantage of it. If everybody could smash that like button for us, that'd be absolutely terrific. Get your comments in down below, which players you want to see step up, because they're definitely going to be some guys that normally wouldn't get that many minutes that might end up seeing some minutes now. And we'll see whether they can take those chances. But let's get straight into it here, everybody, to see which injuries we do have in front of us. We, of course, had the original Bentancur injury from last season. Bentancur has stepped up in his rehabilitation over the last few weeks and has taken part in some warm-up exercises, by the way, with the rest of his teammates. He has been desperate to join in the proper sessions, but his recovery is being carefully managed, and he's still only joining the squad for the warm-ups for the time being. November still remains to be his time frame for his return, but Ange and everyone else at Tottenham will make sure that he is not rushed back in any sort of way. Of course, we also have Perisic's injury that happened earlier in the season as well. He's going to be out for a long, long time. I think even he came out and said that he's looking forward to maybe helping us out towards kind of the end of the year. And Perisic's ACL out for the new year and may well have played his last game for Tottenham, but I think he's pushing to try to get back for, I think, the Euros, right, for Croatia. So that could mean maybe he could get some opportunities for us. Alfie Whiteman is out with an ankle injury, as is Ryan Sessegnon, but those guys, I would say, not really too important in those cases. In the case of Giovanni Lo Celso, he has not returned to full training, but he is said to be coming back soon. We also look at Monor Solomon, of course, who just actually picked up a major injury, and he is having surgery scheduled for this afternoon today after tearing his meniscus in training, facing at least a couple of months out. And again, that was a torn meniscus, so he could be, I think, around 2 to 3 months out. Johnson could be back after international break. Brennan Johnson will be back for Tottenham's first game after the international break against Fulham on Monday, October 23rd. Davo, lots of injuries here. Plenty, of guys that sort of take up so many different positions. Midfielders, I think there's a real kind of missing, there are a lot of missing places up front when you look at it. Which guys, do you think we're going to be missing the most? And we also have to think about, which ones can step up.
Well, of course, we also have Madison carrying knocks as well, Jack,
Very
and
good
Sonny
point.
as well. So, not that they're out, but we're also managing their minutes. Look, with Bentancur, Jack, I'm actually not really too concerned. I don't think there is any need to rush him back. I think when Basuma or Sarr head off to AFCON, I think specifically Basuma, that's where Bentancur really needs to sort of be ready, fully match fit, ready to go. I think he steps in and takes someone like Basuma's position. We all ask, who's going to replace Basuma or who can come in and do what Basuma does. I think Bentekers is definitely your guy in that regard. So I'm not really too concerned on that area. It's the forward areas that's concerning me, Jack, because I said this in pre-season that I think Ange Postecoglou will have a lot of headaches finding his best front three this season. And that has come to fruition. You look at that left-hand side, no one's really sort of nailed down that spot all season long. It's sort of been a mix and match of players. You've had Solomon, you've had Perisic, you've had Richarlison there at the weekend. You've had Brennan Johnson down that side. So no one's really sort of laid down the marker for that position. Then up front, of course, you're mixing up between Son and Richarlison. So I do think we are bordering on an injury crisis. But Jack, it's a great opportunity and a great test of Tottenham's actual sort of model and the route that we've gone down in terms of youth-centric, right? Looking after them under 21 players and signing up on long-term deals, because obviously there's a pathway there for us and we're looking to develop them to bring them through. So it's a real opportunity and a good test
Yeah.
to see put that model to the test, right?
Well, when you think about it, who's really left other than Brian Hill? I guess that's available in that front line. I think Brian Hill is probably the only attacker I can really think of that's sort of, I think that's been brought in that isn't featuring in the academy or of any kind. You have to now look at players like Jamie Donnelly. You have to think about guys maybe like June Bell. Of course, Richarlison is going to have to step up as well. He's going to maybe have to fill in for either Sonny or just also fill in for maybe others. Maybe he's going to have to play on the wing again if need be. But missing Brennan Johnson is huge because he was kind of supposed to, I guess, fill in a variety of different positions up front. I guess missing as well Perisic is huge for what he brings as sort of an impact sub for us. progress. I think maybe, starting, he wasn't going to start too many games, but he has been a really sort of obvious sub to make in kind of a lot of games when you really need that service into the penalty area. I would say, too, most of Richarlison's goals seem to kind of come from Perisic, so I'm a little worried as a bit of a Richie fan because,
Yeah.
he's missing his service. Now he's missing his itch. But, yeah, Dave, you have to think now, with only, what is it, Brian Hill now left as the last sort of senior team player of any sort of experience. Now's the opportunity for Spurs to look at that very, very talented academy. And, since you brought up, right, it's more injuries in the forward area that you're concerned about. Maybe not really going to be a chance then for Alfie Dorrington or an Ashley Phillips that you really love to rave about, more kind of the forward area. So which sort of forwards do you think can, maybe deserve, the chance and can fill in at a left wing, a right wing, and maybe other areas?
Well, look, we'll go through every player that I have on the list, Jack, and we'll have a little conversation on it. There's 4 or 5 there. But briefly, I do want to say to people, I wouldn't be scared about putting Tottenham's sort of model to the test, because there's always been an argument that, they can't make the step up, they're too young, this, that, and the other. But if you actually go back and look at what Ange Postecoglou wrote in one of his books, he says if there's a player with that sort of ability, it's better to test them early to see whether they're good enough or not, rather than keep wasting resources on them. So he has no problem throwing people into the firing line, no problem whatsoever. But also, Tottenham have lowered the average age of the squad, but yet the quality has enhanced right across the pitch. So I would say to fans out there, don't be afraid of their age or anything like that, because as it's seen, we've had players in the past who were older, tried and tested. Look where they put us compared to the younger players that we've brought in and where we are now. So look, Jack, let's actually start with your boy Richie, and then we'll make our way through Villiers, Donnelly, Gill, Sunset Bell, people like that. But with Richie, Jack, for me, I think this is a massive opportunity for the guy. With Son picking up knocks, and playing through that, and his minutes having to be managed, I do think he will get more minutes down the middle, in some games. A bit like what happened against Liverpool last week, where he'd been moved off the left into the middle. And I do think he'll probably start this week against Luton off the left-hand side, depending on how fit Sonny is. Which is a great opportunity, but someone will have to come off, and I do envision maybe Richarlison going into the middle. But this is a massive opportunity for him, and I think he has to take it. He doesn't look as erratic or as out of form as he did before.
Yeah, past couple of weeks have been good for him. No.
Yeah, they've been very good for him, Jack. And I think, this is a real opportunity for him now to sort of gather a bit of momentum, gather a bit of confidence. He's going to play for a couple of weeks on the bounce. I think he has to take this opportunity, though. That's the only thing around it. I would almost not say last chance saloon, but if he finds himself back down the pecking order again, I think it'd be very hard to pick himself back up off the floor again and go again. So I do think he has to take this opportunity.
Almost. Yeah, what were you about to say? Yeah,
this
opportunity. I was going to say, it's almost maybe his last chance with really Spurs fans, with a lot of Spurs fans, because now he's kind of taking himself out of the limelight, at least for the time being. Because like I said, he's had a good couple of weeks. He's sort of, the pressure is still going to be on him, I think, from sort of the, kind of from maybe a further level or a deeper level. But I think in a way he's bought himself a little bit of time here with the past couple of weeks, or he's taken himself out of the spotlight a little bit. But I feel like what you brought up with Sonny kind of going down injured and is clearly battling through it, the fact that he was taken off so early in that last match really indicated, I think, that he's really clearly pushing through something, because it's obviously wouldn't take him out that early if he wasn't really pushing through something serious. So Richie has to do 2 things. He has to fill in through the middle, like you brought up, and he might have to play out on the wing as well. And I know the wing, he can be a little, he can be inconsistent. He can have one good moment, and then the next moment he looks very uncomfortable, and he looks like he doesn't really know what he's actually doing out there. In sort of the striker area, I think he's good in the air, and I think he gives center backs a lot to think about. He just hasn't exactly taken a lot of his chances, though, when kind of, in through the middle. He has to do a few things, I think, through kind of the wing and through the middle. He has to either create for others on that wing in a way that I think he was doing in the last game, but has to do it on a consistent basis, and maybe against a team like Luton Town, which are going to sit very deep. It's going to be a very different game to, I think, that Liverpool one, where in kind of the Liverpool game, he did have that space sort of running behind and sort of caused them problems, and they were allowing him to get a lot of the ball and kind of make things happen. And I'm not not sure if Luton Town are really going to do that.
Yeah.
And then through the middle, I think, like I said, his strength is in the air. Like, if it's in the air, it looks like he'll finish it. But if it's on the floor, he's sort of struggled with those chances, and that's what he needs to do. Sonny has had the opposite problem. Sonny's had, very few chances, but it sort of took every single one of his chances. When we even look at it, he doesn't even have that many shots registered, but he has some of the most shots on target in the Premier League right now, which is just short of, showing that he's a clinical striker. And we need Richie to be clinical. And last thing here, Dave, we need him to be injury free, because last season he had a lot of injuries when we needed him to fill in, like you brought up here. I remember Kane needed rest last season. Remember Sonny needed rest last season. And it felt like Richarlison obviously would be the guy you'd throw in, but every single time he was also injured. And then we had to sort of push Sonny, we had to push Kane, we had to keep playing them, and Richie just wasn't able to fill in for them. Now is his chance to fill in and take advantage of already a good couple of weeks. So let's hope that Big Rich can win the fan base back over. I think we also could, think about maybe Alejo Valise as well. He seems to be getting more minutes, and maybe even though he kind of was a little unimpressive in that one kind of under 21 game where he missed a lot of sitters, he looked like he was causing some issues in that game versus Liverpool, and he's called upon him before. Postecoglou seems to like the guy. So Dave, Alejo Valise, any chances there?
Well, look, he came off the bench against Liverpool, Jack. Postecoglou wouldn't have thrown him in the fire line if he didn't think he was capable. Postecoglou came out and said before the game that he actually had a good week in training. Look, what we've seen from the under-21s, look, Jack, there was a lot, what would you say, left to be desired with the finishing, right? It was very poor, very lackadaisical. Maybe he just thought he was sort of too good for that level, and maybe a bit of arrogance there, maybe. But his all-round play was good, and the timings of his run was good. And they do say keep getting into positions. And they do say getting into positions is half the battle, or the hardest battle, right? And he was there. Maybe the finishing he just needs to work on. But look, Jack, for me, again, I'm not 100% sure we're going to go into the market and buy a striker like everyone else is thinking. When I sort of take a step back and look back at it, I did think we needed to go in and replace Kane, but we are still scoring goals, so that's good. But when I look at it, I think Spurs looked at the likes of Gift Orban and other hot properties around Europe, looked at the price and said, not happening. So they've then identified Valise, and he's going to be the guy to come in here that they're going to look to develop and take this club forward beyond Son, beyond Richarlison.
Almost like our own Ferguson of some kind, maybe, right? Like at Brighton, right? A young, talented kid that they brought in through the academy, and then they knew one day is going to be, the hot property of the Premier League. Do you think Alejo Valise is on? Obviously, might not be where Ferguson is. Ferguson is a hell of a player, but do you think there's a similar project going on here? Sorry to interrupt.
No, 100%. You're absolutely spot on, Jackal. Like, you look at Adoji, right? We bought him, loaned him back, and he's straight into the team,
Good point.
People like that.
As well seems to be another one. Yeah.
Papa Matasar, another one that we bought, we had a vision for, now he's in the team. So, we do operate like that. We do have visions for these players. And for me, I think, look, there will be minutes for him. And I think a lot of them will be through the middle. I don't think we'll see this guy off the left. So there will be minutes there for the kid. And I think there's no better opportunity than this weekend, if he gets a bit, might get 10 minutes or so, for him to sort of grab a goal and put his name on the map and then earn more minutes on the next game and build off that. I think there's a real opportunity there for the guy. Yeah. But on that, like I said, Jack, I don't know what you think, but I'm not convinced we're going to go into the market for a striker. I think this is a long-term strategy. Something that I've pointed out for quite some time with a lot of these players.
The only thing that worries me is that we need to, at all times, keep one very clinical finisher in the team. And we've had Sonny be that guy when in the bigger games, like, Liverpool, Arsenal, you need somebody who can just be ice cold in those moments. And can I really say that with Richarlison? No. Can I really say that with Alejo Valise? Of course not. Like, the kid's only so young. And that's where I'm slightly worried. Do we have a real ice-cold finisher in the team if Sonny were missing? I'm not so sure. Maybe Madison, but it's just hard to really think about it up front. And so I would be slightly worried in that department. But then again, like Sonny right now, most teams only have one sort of finisher in that kind of area. You don't often have two or three, and maybe we've gotten used to having two or three because we've had Son and Kane in the team at the same time, like guys who are just absolutely ruthless. That's my slight worry. Is I think if we were missing Sonny for an extended period, do we have an ice cold finisher in those bigger games? Maybe not, but it's sort of also part of a rebuilding season, right? You might not have that guy in your rebuilding season. You might only have one of them, and he's missing. It's a big loss, and you just have to go through it and hope that guys like Richarlison, who we just spoke about earlier, step up. Guys like Alejo Valise, who we're speaking about right now, step up, and other players as well. I think it's an interesting theory, Dave. I think probably a lot of people would agree with it.
Just off the back of what you're saying there, Jack, like the thing is, Richarlison or Valise haven't had a chance to be clinical, or haven't need to show that they need to be clinical, right? Because Son's doing the job.
Very true.
But now you don't have Son. It's a bit like the whole Kane thing, right? Now if you all of a sudden, you take Kane out, okay, Son's coming to fill the void, but you take Son out, now there is an opportunity for Richarlison or Valise to be that guy. So let's wait and see. Sometimes in football, it's just timing. Sometimes timing is a miraculous thing. I hear a lot of ex-pros talk about it. Well, look, my opportunity came through injuries or suspensions or, just lucky with timing. So who knows? It could be one of their times. Let's move on to Jamie Donnelly as well, Jack. Now, look, this guy, he can play a number of positions. Yeah. He can play up front, he can play left, he can play right, and I'd also argue he could play Maddison's role if we have to take Maddison off. When you look at him for the under-21s, that's where he's predominantly played, in that sort of cam role. Not only does he lead from the front with the press out of possession, but in possession, the guy's absolutely quality. Ripping it up, assisting left, right, and centre, and scoring goals. I think, 7 goals, 9 assists so far this season, and is the real driving force behind that under-21 team. Now, this is a guy that we started speaking about last season, Jack. That potentially he could end up, making his way up through the ranks and getting into the first team. And I think, look, maybe the opportunity has come a bit sooner for him. And that pathway has come a bit sooner for him with the amount of injuries that piled up. Yeah. But look, this is a kid that was on the bench against Liverpool last week, unlucky not to get minutes. But what I love about him, Jack, is the mentality and the attitude is also correct. And when you've got the ability and you've got the mentality and the attitude to match, you're going to go on to become a Premier League football player or a superstar. And the reason why I say that is he made the bench against Liverpool, but then didn't get minutes, but then was asked to play against Chelsea for the under-21s, despite all of our injury problems. Now, he could have went there with an ego, thinking, too good for this now, I'm up around the senior team, injuries, protecting himself. He did not do that. He went out and drove the team forward again, scoring another 2 goals, and he is knocking on the door. Now, absolutely everybody is talking about him. But what I will say is, don't forget, we were on it first. But there's a massive opportunity for the kid, Jack, because he's very much a Postecoglou player in and out of possession.
Yeah. I feel like there's a chance for him actually down the left or down the right, kind of upcoming. Kulusevski is fully fit, whereas the left wing seems to be where there's kind of some trouble, right? Solomon's injured. Sonny's battling through an injury. Richarlison's, I think, a bit iffy down that left wing sometimes. And you could think maybe Jamie Donnelly could provide a similar sort of creativity to what we would get to Perisic. Not saying it's nearly as productive as what Perisic is, but he has a left foot that's an absolute wand of a left foot, Jamie Donnelly, and you could put in some really good crosses, and some of his, assists from this season have been some really deep lying sort of kind of crosses, or some balls in that have been some very deep, sort of passes from, from some range, right? So I think maybe he could play down the left. He could also, I guess, fill in for Maddison if need be through the middle. That is asking a whole lot of him, though, right? That's really throwing a kid, I think, into the deep end, asking him to do what Maddison does in midfield. He would need a lot of help around him, but I rate his creativity, right? I think he could handle it. I just feel like where we actually need somebody, right, is maybe more in that forward line, and I could see him actually filling in down that left wing. And we'll get on to him, soon, but also Hill Messi, we know, can offer maybe something similar down that left wing in a way. But Jamie Donnelly, if anybody's seen some of his sort of highlights, or if anybody's seen some of the assists that he has grabbed, I do think he could actually whip in some pretty decent crosses, to guys like Richarlison.
Well, just go back and look at the Derby game.
Lancashire is a similar player even to a Richarlison, like a big, tall striker who likes, those sort of that service into the penalty area.
Just them crosses for Richie that you were talking about. You go back and look at the Derby game for the under-21s this year. Struggled in large parts of that game, but Lancashire came off the bench, target man in the box. Donnelly put in two identical crosses. We ended up winning the game 2-0 on the night. So I think you're absolutely spot on with that, Jack. And just quickly, I think maybe the reason why he's up there ahead of the likes of a Will Lancashire, or ahead of the likes of maybe a Sunset Bell and a Santiago, because look, they've all got ability, but I think with Donnelly, it's definitely 100% the work rate out of possession. When you watch the under-21s, he works harder than any other forward player in that team out of possession. I think that's what gives him the edge and potentially why he's up there, above maybe other people.
Yeah.
But look, Jack, let's get on to the prophet, the seventh wonder of the world, the sixth member of the Beatles, Brian Gale Messi. Of course, his time at Tottenham has been plagued with injuries, Jack. But like I said, sometimes timing is the
Yeah.
right thing in football, right? He's coming back from injury at a time where a lot of other players ahead of him in the pecking order are going out
Yeah.
injured. And with Brian Gale Messi, I would say if there's ever a time for him to make an impact and a mark at Tottenham and really show the ability that we've been sort of boasting that he has, it's now in the Ange Postecoglou system. The way he acts out of possession suits Ange Postecoglou where it didn't really suit Antonio Conte. But with how good he is in possession as well, I think he's 100% a Postecoglou player, Jack.
Yeah.
Will he take this opportunity? I think it comes down to, I think this will be his last.
I think he kind of has to take it, and he also has some favorable opponents coming up, right? Fulham and Luton Town seem like teams that he would probably do quite well against. You look at that Crystal Palace team that we came up against; they were playing very
Yeah.
defensive, and he was down that right hand side, and we needed somebody to sort of just unlock sort of those little areas, play those, intricate little passes through the lines to break sort of the midfield and the defense down. And he was able to do it down the right hand side. And we know he's comfortable down the left. And if, again, we need service into the box, he doesn't really have the cross that I think Perisic does, but he can, try to at least create something down there by taking on his man and kind of do maybe what we were missing actually from Solomon. I feel like in that Liverpool game, we were just crying out for somebody just to take it down the byline and just make something happen. They didn't even need to whip in a brilliant cross. Just take it down the byline and make him have to honor that side. And we know Hill would definitely do that. And then Hill can also try to cut back inside as well, still on that left foot. I feel like this is a huge chance for him. He can probably get at least 30 minutes, I think, in this Luton Town game, and maybe even start. But I at least see him getting 30 minutes off the bench, at least hopefully. He has all the attributes for this system. And also, too, I think against these sort of low block, very defensive teams, you're not as much asking him to really handle sort of like the big physical battles like you would in a big derby or like you would against a Liverpool or an Arsenal or anything like that. You're just asking somebody just to be creative on the ball and just kind of make things happen against a very stubborn defense that really isn't going to try to, concede anything. And I think Hill is sort of that guy in those sort of moments that is a clever player to bring onto the pitch, that is a bit of a live wire and is just a difficult guy to deal with in those sort of areas. So this is a game that suits him. I even think the Fulham game actually also suits him sort of too. So I hope that he takes advantage of these minutes, and I hope Postecoglou gives them. And I have confidence with him either playing down the left or the right. I think he can offer something kind of different in both areas, but both still effective.
Do you know what, Jack? I completely agree with you. I think he can play left or right. I have a sneaky suspicion he could be used as a replacement for Maddison off the bench. I've spoke
Wayne
about this
Bonner's
before.
dream.
Yeah, I've spoke about this before. For me, I think someone like Gill, with his attributes, he's way more suited to the middle of the park, especially in a team that dominates possession, because he's one that will pick you up a lot of free kicks, and it opens up the pitch for him to be able to go left or right. Whereas down the wings, it's very easy to show him down the wing, and if you have the pace to match him, it's very easy to outmuscle him off the ball. Whereas I do think through the middle, I think he becomes a complete menace, a bit like Luka Modric was with Tottenham when Harry Redknapp moved him in. And since when Harry Redknapp moved him in, went on to be a Ballon d'Or winner. And I look at Gill, I think he's similar frame, similar sort of on the ball, the movements as well from an early Luka Modric days at Tottenham, and I would like to see him maybe in the middle. And when we're talking about Maddison, right, he's another one that's come off in big games, Arsenal, Liverpool, etc., and we sort of have lacked that creativity. I wonder, could Gill be that replacement for Maddison, who could also get forward and help with that press, breaking out from that midfield? Just an interesting observation and something to keep an eye on. But also, Jack, I think he has a role in this squad as an impact sub, like you alluded to, with Antonio Conte. He was coming off the bench towards the sort of Christmas period, and he was making a lot of great impacts. And I struggled to see why Conte loaned him out and why we brought in Danjuma. I thought he was hard done by on that sort of thing. But when you look at the impact he had off the bench, and you look at Postecoglou and the way he likes to keep the intensity, someone like Brian Hill he will always give his all off the bench, and he'll definitely bring that. So I wouldn't write him off at Tottenham just yet. Look, maybe a couple of quick other mentions on players, Sunsup Bell, or Santiago, potentially, if I think it gets worse, or if Gill isn't fit, potentially might be called up. There's a lot of hype around both. What I will say, Jack, I think you might agree with me on this. I think Santiago was on fire at the start of the season for the under-21s. But that game against Colchester, against the senior men's time, that game against Stoke, where sort of the games get a bit tough, I think he goes hiding a little bit. Whereas I think with Sunsup Bell, he's a constant threat. So I predict he potentially might be the next one up. Again, can play down the right-hand side as well. So, look, interesting to see, but I wouldn't put it beyond a possibility because Postecoglou, like we said, has thrown a Dozy, Van de Ven, Sarr, all straight in there.
I think you covered that. I think Sunsup Bell, personally, my opinion only, doesn't really, much matter, but I think Sunsup Bell probably deserves it more. Santiago, to me, hasn't been nearly as convincing, at least of recent. He's sort of, like Dave has said, has kind of gone missing at times, but that's part of being a young player, right? There's no shame in that. Like, you can be brilliant and then also go missing. And a lot of young players usually have that sort of part of their game. And Sunsup Bell, for me, has just, in at least the games I've watched, he's just been kind of too good. It looks like for some of the oppositions that he's come up against, he's made it look kind of easy. He has a very good sort of trademark kind of cut inside or kind of heel chop inside, and he's just made it look pretty easy at times. I think he's probably been almost as effective or almost as prolific as Jamie Donnelly has been, at least in the last few games. He's been probably one of our best players and really does deserve it, I think. So yeah, I'd give it to probably Sunsup Bell. Santiago, I think, is a brilliant player, but at least on recent form from some of the games and everything, you probably give it more to a Donnelly or Sunsup Bell. Unless you have any other final comments, Dave, I think we'll leave it there. And everybody in the comments, please let us know who you think it needs to take advantage of this injury situation. I think Brian Hill is definitely going to be one that a lot of people would like to see. Can the seventh wonder of the world take advantage of this chance? We'll find out very, very soon. Smash that like button, please, on your way out, and we will be seeing ya. Come on, you Spurs. In the Big Ange we trust. We never stop.
Let's go. Luton this weekend. Be ready.